Warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm your announcer, J. West Secord. Hey. And then we have our host, the big bag of facts, Bad Ben.
Hey.
And lastly, somewhere in some other country, we have A.T. Token.
A more specialized gauge.
Yeah, so Token couldn't come in directly with us, so he is now going to be communicating via a call-in. He's in the middle of a jungle, so if it doesn't sound right, that's the reason why.
And he totally is not quarantining from COVID-19.
What the hell's
What are
that?
we talking about?
Nobody knows what the hell that is. I've made up a disease. 2020 doesn't exist.
Yeah. We're in 2021. I don't understand.
The fucking quarantine's long over now.
Yeah. I thought you said there wasn't a quarantine.
Just saying. All right.
So, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, like, notification bell, all the good, stuff. Plus, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. My bad. BA Chaos Jar. And you can follow me on my Twitter at I'm glad you asked _ And if you ask me random questions, I'll give you random answers in return. Nobody's asked me anything, so it's pretty empty. I'm not a prolific Twitter guy, so, stuff. Anyway, last but not least, if you want to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/chaosjar and give us money. Lots of money.
For bonus episodes.
And you'll get bonus episodes if you pay enough money.
And decent audio quality.
And audio quality. Pay us for audio quality.
We need better equipment.
Yeah, so that way when Token's, out of the country, we can teleport him here.
Yeah.
Would be ideal.
Yeah, it would be. Okay, so what's going into the Chaos Jar today? Before that, I should remind you all that stuff I just said is going to be in the show notes, including the BS Chaos Jar part. That'll be there.
You did it!
Yeah, shut up.
All right. So going in the jar today is Carl Tanzler.
Sounds tantalizing.
Yeah, decent Carl Weathers.
All right, so before we get started on Carl himself, he did spend some time at the Trial Bay Jail, which is in.
That says goal or gowl.
It's pronounced jail.
Yeah, so gowl.
Yeah, I thought it was like Gale or something, but it's actually pronounced jail. So.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird how the English language works that way, but it is in Australia, and, they're all upside down.
Yeah, they're not on fire anymore, too.
Speaking a stolen language.
So, the Trial Bay Jail is a heritage protected site on Cardwell Street in Arakoon, Kempsey Shire, New South Wales, Australia. What a freaking location.
What? That was a location?
Yeah, that's the location.
I thought you were speaking gibberish.
Yeah, it just seems like I was throwing words together.
Check out the Welsh name. Oh my god, 30 consonants in a row.
So it's a former public works prison and internment camp currently owned by the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service.
Oh, that was understandable.
Yeah.
But none of the other shit.
Flooded by emus.
So it's named Trial Bay after a brig ship named the Trial that wrecked on the land in 1816. Originally, the land was inhabited by like the indigenous there, and they used it as a big resource because there was the ocean on one side, and then there was a bunch of like lakes and rivers along the other side, so they could fish out of the lakes, which were freshwater, but also use the sea for fishing and other things that they needed, along with a lot of material and plants that would grow along these shore beds. So it was a really important place for the indigenous, and of course, when Europeans settle places, they like to
fuck everything up.
So,
cause the cataclysm in the place after a cataclysm.
yeah.
Right.
So
If I've learned anything about white people and my relationships, it's I like to come in and fuck things up.
yeah.
And then make a name for yourself.
Of course.
So
The American dream.
They call it family.
So the brig ship Trial was actually a ship that was hijacked by a group of convicts who were hoping to sail to freedom by forcing the crew to head north along the coast. The area that they shipwrecked in was frequented by the indigenous, of course, and many of the survivors lost their lives trying to sail back out on like makeshift boats that they were making to try and get free. Like,
Or just escape Australia, really.
yes. Which is incredibly hard to do.
Yeah, that place has giant snakes and spiders. Plus, they don't even speak English.
And they speak a type of English. And
What?
obviously, it's very messed up, you know, with jail being spelled Gaol.
That's Gowl.
Yeah. So, one female convict actually joined the indigenous and had 2 children with an Aboriginal man, which I would assume he would be the Aboriginal man, because otherwise, who's she having children with? Like, I'm joining the indigenous, but this is my white husband.
No. He's very clearly Puerto Rican.
Yes. Brazilian.
He's somewhere in South Africa.
So, Europeans started...
I mean, South America.
Wow.
I failed geography in high school.
Clearly.
People don't use your magic 8-ball services.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, Europeans started settling in the area, and it really ramped up in 1836. Eventually, the indigenous were forced out. Of course they were, because, you know, white people.
White people.
Yeah. The construction of the jail began in 1877, but was delayed by financial problems many times.
Is that the jail or the jail?
The Gao.
Oh, the Gowl. Yeah.
So, in 1882, one cell block providing single-cell accommodation for 64 of the 128 prisoners was completed. The other prisoners were housed in a wooden barracks.
I think you're going to say barrel.
Yeah, housed in a wooden barrel.
They're just all together in a barrel. And when they pull them out, their arms are all linked together.
The weirdest chain gang ever.
Chain gang.
Although to roll them down the hill would be amazing.
So the jail continued to be constructed, with the final additions being added during World War I. So the jail was overseen originally by Sheriff Harold McLean, who was actually a really big believer in
I love Die Hard.
That's John McLean.
I don't think his first name was Sheriff.
My God, that was my joke. How did you get there?
Teleporting.
So he believed in the penal.
Yeah.
Probably that
He
too,
believed
to
in
be fair.
rehabilitating his penis, and
Very
No
penally.
punishment.
and so he even had some of the prisoners in the final years of their sentence hired onto the project in order to learn skills that would help them integrate back into the workforce in society. So he actually really went the other way on the British reform, where if we teach them how to live their lives, they won't commit crimes because they're skilled and they can do other things.
I don't understand that.
Options.
Our society is not built on that ideal. I don't get it.
Okay. Whatever you
That's
say.
the white
I'm
guy.
white.
If they would just stop committing crimes.
Yeah. Oh my
Say
god.
the same of you guys.
So during World
You
War...
wanted to be here.
So during World War I, the jail was used as an internment camp. Here they would intern German prisoners and what they ruled as enemy aliens.
Is that code for indigenous people?
I would guess so. I don't think that we're like being like, you know what? Those aliens, I think they're our enemies. And then a bunch of Martians got arrested.
Honestly, I didn't even think they were invented until at least the 90s.
Yeah. So,
or maybe the
Australia.
60s.
They did have a war against emus and lost, so it could be them.
well, apparently there was like 2 professors that were of German descent, and they were actually at a committee meeting with the like council for like the embassy at Australia to try and oversee how production would go. And this is during World War I when the Germans declared war and so on. Well, they ended up becoming interned in this camp because of the fact that they spoke out against the British wanting to put people in the internment camp.
Okay, so it's a political camp as well.
Yeah, so enemy aliens, I believe, is anybody who was in a position of power that would speak out against putting these people in these camps.
But when do the UFOs come in?
World War I Camp X-Ray.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So, the camp was originally overseen by Major Sands.
Sure.
That was literally his name, Major Sands.
Did he invent the font?
I have no idea. So,
Because there's a lot of people who will hate him.
quote, rules in the camp were overseen by elected internee committee. So they would elect internees in this internment camp to oversee everything inside. So it wasn't like a concentration camp where they were just like beating down people and forcing them through workforce and stuff. People actually lived here.
I feel like that would probably ruin their concentration.
Yeah.
Kind of the point, really.
Wait till you hear what they had in this camp and how it would ruin the concentration. So the committee also made a great deal of subcommittees to help with aspects of camp life while facilitating communication.
Why people love committees?
I don't know.
Camp life? Like counselors and shit?
I guess so. Well, it is a committee, so there should be counselors on the committee.
Oh, okay.
But while facilitating the communication to the camp's commandant. So the food was prepared in the mess hall and kitchen using rations of bread, milk, vegetables, rice, and other food staples, though some of that food was also stapled by other food grown within the camp. So they had like gardens to like grow these things.
Sorry, I literally imagine them taking those foods and stapling other foods. Literally.
Food staples.
Into those. Is like, and they would staple those foods with other foods.
The canteen had...
Staple the tree.
The canteen
Wait, is
had...
this like a hippie prisoner commune?
Yeah, well, it's because these people were still technically citizens of Australia. They're just German descent, or they immigrated from Germany over to Australia. So they weren't...
Well, like
there
a
weren't...
nicer version of the American-Japanese camp space.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
So the canteen had other foods, but the camp also boasted a gourmet restaurant known as the Duck Coop. So a gourmet restaurant. And it had a bohemian cafe known as the Artist's Den.
Hippie
Yeah,
commune.
I would never call something fancy by the name of Duck Coop.
You know, could you imagine being in this camp and being like, you know what? Let's go to the Duck Coop tonight. I feel like, fancy eating.
Let's go to the Duck Coop. What do they serve? I think they serve chicken. I'm not sure.
They have some sort of bird.
It's poultry. I think it's poultry.
But they have German accents.
Poultry. No, the Germans were the ones buying.
Wow.
They're poultry. We're selling it.
They have like a French maitre d'.
Yeah, I'm totally being a French guy right
No.
now.
I'm just saying, there's like a French maitre d', and you're like the general manager of it, and like there's just some kind of, you want the duck?
Go ahead, offer him the duck. He'll love it. I just realized this voice is very Snagglepuss.
So There was also education in the jail, and there was a theater, an orchestra, and a library.
An orchestra?
Yeah.
Damn it.
And there was committees to oversee all these things. Like,
You know,
Your prison is better than my town.
yeah,
Hugh Jackman played at that orchestra.
he totally did.
He is. They hold fucking opera concerts of Hugh Jackman alone on a stage for like 2 hours, and they love it in Australia.
And elsewhere.
So, the camp was closed in July of 1918, and the internees were moved to other camps. Before they left, the internees were able to erect a stone cairn as a memorial for 5 internees who died in the camp. The monument was placed... Yeah, cairn. Either or.
What is that? I want to know what that is.
So it's like a monument.
A monument cairn.
Yeah.
Cairn.
Cairn.
Karen? Karen.
Where we put those?
Cairn.
It doesn't want to speak to the manager.
I'm not following.
So the monument was placed on a crest where 2 of the dead were buried. However, the monument was destroyed not long after the transfer, and it was later restored with funds and assistance from the West German government in 1959.
Oh, that helped clear it up.
Yeah. So
Where does Carl fella fit in?
So he actually spent time here. We'll talk about that in a second. The site is now a heritage ruin which you can tour. So it's actually it was abandoned for a while, and they have done restorations on it, but not a lot. They've essentially left it how it was left after the camp was closed down.
Okay.
So now, from what I see on your script, because I don't really get to see this thing, we're about to talk about Carl Taser.
All right, so Karl Tanzler went by many names, including Count Karl von Kossel, which appears on many hospital records. George Karl Tanzler, which is listed on his German marriage certificate.
The comedian?
Carlin.
And Karl Tanzler von Kossel, which is listed on his U.S. citizenship papers. But I'm just going to stick to Karl Tanzler because, it's better. So he was born on February 8th, 1877 in Dresden, Germany, which is actually one of a capital of the region that it's currently in Germany. He grew up in Imperial Germany, but just before World War I, he had relocated to Australia. During his childhood, and for a brief period while he was traveling in Genoa, Italy, he claimed to have been visited by his dead ancestor, Countess Anna Constantia von Kossel. So I think that's where the von Kossel comes from. Who showed him the face of his true love and revealed it as an exotic, dark-haired woman. Now, the Countess here was born in 1680. She was the daughter of a knight and his wife, who herself was a daughter of a prominent business owner. She began serving as a lady-in-waiting for Duke Christian Albrecht's daughter. She has a very interesting story as well. It's crazy.
Why does everybody have to have multiple names?
I have no idea. But she served for the daughter Sophie Amalie, so a duke's daughter.
Wait, you don't know why people have multiple names?
Well, they all have multiple names, but then they have these massive titles and stuff.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she moved with Sophie when Sophie married a hereditary prince. Anna fell pregnant.
Is that something you catch? Or no, you're born with it, right?
Yeah, you're born with that.
Well, it's hereditary.
Yeah. So Anna fell pregnant, and the father was possibly the younger brother of the prince, Ludwig Rudolf. And she was exiled after the child's birth in 1702, so she basically was sent back to her parents' house. After this, she eventually became close to Augustus the Strong, King of Poland and Elector of Saxony, while serving for a baron. He had an official mistress in his court, known as Princess Tishen, whom he banished in 1705, and just like that, Anna was his official mistress. I love that mistress was an official title.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
I don't know a lot about history.
There's a title for everything. There was a title for the guy who wiped the king's ass. It's ridiculous.
What's even more beautiful is that she was then named to the created position of Imperial Countess of Kossel in 1706 and bore the king 3 children. They created a countess position just for her. Like, so, however, the court felt that she interfered too much in the politics with the king, and in 1713 she was banished to Pillnitz Castle, but eventually fled to Berlin in 1715, and she tried to get her hands on Augustus's written marriage promises, but failed in doing so, and the marriage promises were written down and held by her cousin, who wouldn't give them over to her. She wound up arrested and exchanged to Saxony for Prussian deserters. And then she was exiled by Augustus in December 1716, where she spent the remaining 49 years of her life. So she just was put into exile for the rest of her life.
Wow, she had a journey and a half.
So he's seeing this dead ancestor of his, apparently.
From 200 years ago.
Yeah. Who showed him a face of a dark-haired woman who looks exotic, apparently. And that's the true love of his life, apparently.
Well, what did Tapir do about it?
So Tanzler wrote an entire account about his time in Australia during the when he wrote this, he titled it "The Trial Bay Organ, a Product of Wit and Ingenuity," and he put it under the name Karl von Kossel. So the autobiography details his entire time in Australia and the internment camp during the war, followed by his return to Germany. And to quote the editorial note, and this comes directly from the editorial, many years ago, Karl von Kossel traveled to India, from India to Australia with the intention of proceeding to the South Seas island. He paused in Australia to collect equipment and suitable boats and to become acquainted with prevailing weather and sea conditions. However, he became interested in engineering and electrical work there, bought property, boats, an organ, an island in the Pacific, so that he was still in Australia at the end of 10 years. He had just begun to build a trans-ocean flyer when war broke out, and the British military authorities placed him in a concentration camp for safekeeping, along with many officers from India and China who were prisoners of war. Later, he was removed to Trial Bay, to a castle-like prison on the cliffs, and there the work with his in this narrative was accomplished. At the end of the war, no prisoner was permitted to return to their former residence, and all were shipped back to the prisoners' exchange in Holland. When Karl von Kossel was released, he set out to find his mother, whom he had not heard from since the beginning of the war. Finding her safe, he remained with her for 3 years, witnessing the chaos that followed in the wake of the war. Finally, she suggested to her son to return to his sister in the United States.
Let me just say, putting someone in a concentration camp for safekeeping is like putting your balloons in an Iron Maiden.
Yeah. So, in the account, there was actually an account of him trying to build a secret sailboat to escape with, and the account of Tanzler's time in Trial Bay Jail, along with the building of the secret sailboat, is confirmed by, this is going to be fucking brutal, Jnana Tiloka Mahathara, who was a German Buddhist monk who we will speak about in another episode. Jnana Tiloka planned to escape the jail with the Count Karl von Kossel in a secret sailboat. So he wrote about this, and so this is obviously, this is something that's in his, account. So obviously there is some correlation that's confirmed here. So after returning to Germany in the 1920s, Tanzler married Doris Schaefer, who was born in 1889 and died in 1977, and the couple had 2 daughters, Aisha Tanzler, who was born in 1922 and died in 1998, and Clarissa Tanzler, who was born in 1924 but died in 1934. She died of diphtheria. So she was only 10 years old, yeah.
The Twizzler family doesn't really last long now, does it?
Yeah.
Well, the family did back then.
So, on February 6, 1926, Tanzler sailed from Rotterdam, to Havana, Cuba. From Cuba, he reunited with his sister in Zephyr Hills, Florida. His sister already settled there earlier, and soon after he arrived, his family joined him. Carl took a job at the U.S. Marine Hospital as a radiology technician in Key West, Florida in 1927. He did this after he left his family behind and settled into the name Carl von Kossel. He actually went by Dr. Count Carl von Kossel.
Yeah, that's...
Dr. Count?
Yeah. So...
Would it go in that order, or is he just...
Or he'd be Count Dr. Carl von Kossel?
Yeah, like, that actually makes more sense. Like, which title would go first?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works.
If I was getting an x-ray from a guy who called himself Count, I might ask for another technician.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm Count Carl von Kossel.
No, we already got a count. Hello, Dracula, the
Radiologists
name?
typically doctors?
Pardon?
Are radiologists typically doctors? Like, that's a technical position these days.
He technically was calling himself doctor, like his medical... like the medical hospital papers that he would sign would say Dr. Count Carl von Kossel.
But he himself...
certified in any way?
No. That's what I'm gathering, at least.
I don't think he was actually a count of anything.
Or a
He was
doctor.
a Judge Rinder of his day.
So, it's here that on April 22nd, 1930, that Alana, who also went by Helen, Milagro de Hoyos, who was born in 1909, was brought to the hospital by her mother for an examination. Alana was the daughter of a local cigar maker, Francisco Pancho Hoyos, who was born in 1883 and died in 1934, and Aurora Milagro, who was born in 1881 and died in 1940. She had two sisters, Florida, who went by Nana, 1906, who was born in 1906 and died in 1944, and Florinda was married to Mario Medina, who was a local hero because he was electrocuted while rescuing a coworker who had hit a power line with his crane.
Is he related to that black woman in those movies?
Sure.
So, however, Mario would pass away of tuberculosis in 1944. Her other sister was known as Celia, who was born in 1913 but died in 1934. So this family doesn't live very long, and there's a reason for that.
We established that.
Alina was still technically married to Luis Meza, but he had abandoned her after she had had a miscarriage. So Carl immediately recognized Alina as the dark-haired exotic woman that the Countess had shown him all those years ago. He took a keen interest in her after she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, which was a disease that would claim just about every member of her family. So basically, that's what all these people are dying out from is tuberculosis, because it was so widespread back then. He used his self-professed medical knowledge in order to treat and try to cure her of the disease. Tanzler would bring an odd X-ray machine to her house and douse her with radiations from the X-ray machine in order to treat her. He also would shower her in gifts, so clothing, perfume, jewelry, and all this kind of stuff, and professed his love to her, but no records ever showed that Alina returned those feelings. So it's very possible that she was like, just leave me the fuck alone, I'm dying. Like, just treat this and...
That, and the Countess said that was, his love. It didn't say that she loved him in return, just that he would love her.
To be fair, getting doused in radiation probably doesn't do a lot for your libido.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't think so easily.
And you're dying of tuberculosis, you can barely breathe, like...
Come on, Tassel, there's better ways to get your groove on.
Well, you're also still married. You left your fucking wife and kids behind, and you're still in the same state. Like...
Excuses.
So, eventually Alina did succumb to the disease on October 25th, 1931. She was only 22 years old. She was staying with her parents at her parents' home when she died. Tanzler was given permission by the family to build an above-ground mausoleum in Key West Cemetery. He also had a death mask made of her, and in the mausoleum, he had Alina's body put into a metal airtight casket with a formaldehyde incubation tank.
What?
That's really weird.
So he realized that her body was going to decompose, so he made it an airtight casket with a formaldehyde incubation tank. Like,
some elaborate shit there, Taskmaster.
Yeah. Tanzler would visit every night.
Like creepy, isn't it?
What?
Nothing. You just overemphasize his name and all.
Yeah.
That's all.
So, like I said, Carl would visit every night. It became an obsession of his. He even quit his job at the hospital so that he could spend more time visiting her at the cemetery. So, Carl said that the spirit of Alina would visit and speak to him and often serenade him with a song while he was visiting. He would serenade her corpse with a favorite Spanish song of hers. Her spirit would beg him to take her home with him from the grave. Finally, one night in April of 1933, he removed the body from the crypt, and under the cover of night, he carried her body away in a toy wagon and brought it back to his house.
Is that the tank?
Toy wagon?
Surfing formaldehyde.
Yeah, he didn't bring the casket, he just took the body.
In a toy wagon. I hope it was a red one.
Or radio flyer.
I imagine, like, especially the time, it's probably made out of wood, and you just hear...
Yeah. So, by this point, Alina's body had decomposed despite his best efforts, and it had decomposed quite a bit, and so he attached the bones together in the body with piano wire and fitted the face with glass eyes. As the skin would decompose, he would replace it with silk cloth coated in wax and plaster of Paris.
This is the most fucked up marionette of all time.
Yeah. As the hair fell out due to decomposition, he fashioned a wig out of the same hair that would fall out for the body. So as the hair was falling out, he's just making this fucking wig.
I mean, recycling.
Yeah.
Yay.
So he kept the body's form by stuffing it with rags, and her body was dressed in stockings, jewelry, and gloves. He kept the body in his bed, and to cover the smell of decomposition, he would use crates and crates of perfume, disinfectants, and preserving agents to try and slow down the decomposition and to just cover up the smell of the rot.
This is just sad.
Yeah. So his neighbors and such did notice that he had quit his job and that his nightly visits had stopped to the cemetery, which was odd. And they were noticing these crates of perfume and all this stuff showing up at his house. And they would notice that he was buying a lot of women's clothing. So
He was trans.
How does he afford all this shit? He's not working.
You totally need disinfectant to be.
Duh!
So, well, he is a doctor. He's probably
Yeah, he's doing his own surgery. Yeah, you beat me to it.
But anyways,
Successfully treat tuberculosis.
So this sparked rumors about what he possibly had done, stealing the body and so on. And finally, a boy in the area spotted Tanzler dancing with what looked like a life-size doll in front of an open window. So,
He's pretty happy.
7 years goes by, and in October of 1940, Florinda, Alina's surviving sister, got wind of the speculation that Carl was sleeping with the body of her disinterred sister.
Florinda?
Yeah, Florinda, Nana. That's her.
Oh, yeah, Nana.
Yeah. The one that was married to the guy who, died of tuberculosis, but saved that other guy when when he was being electrocuted. So, Florinda shows up at his house
Nana.
and asks Tanzler to go with her to the mausoleum to show her the body of her sister. And his response was, "That won't be necessary." He then invites her inside, brings her up to the bedroom where she was put on his bed. She was dressed in a wedding gown, and he proudly shows off this crazy corpse puppet he's made.
It's a doll at best.
Yeah. So She at first refused to believe that it was her sister, but she did notify the authorities, and they eventually did discover that this was the body through an autopsy. He was arrested, and after a psychiatric evaluation that found him competent to stand trial, he was forced to stand trial for wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization.
Yeah, clearly sane.
Yeah. Though a preliminary hearing was held, the case was dropped because the statute of limitations had expired, and Tanzler was able to go free. Yeah. So he was a free man. Alina's body was Bart? Go ahead.
They recovered the body, right?
Yep, they have it. So Alina's body was examined by physicians and pathologists and put on display at Dean Lopez Funeral Home, where over 8,500 people would come to view it. Eventually, it was reburied in a secret, unmarked grave to prevent him from tracking it back down.
Why did so many people come to see it? Just because it was that weird?
Because it was weird, and because Tanzler was met with an overwhelming sympathetic response from the public, who viewed him as an eccentric romantic.
Okay.
Yeah, so is Captain Hero.
Yeah. So, as the years have gone on, evidence surfaced that despite initial reports, it is very possible that Tanzler engaged in necrophilia with Alina's corpse. Two physicians who conducted the autopsy in 1940 recalled in 1972, so 30 years later, that there was a vaginal tube inserted inside of the corpse that was to allow for sexual intercourse. However,
like a fleshlight in the corpse?
Yeah, essentially. However,
no, sex doll.
However, no photos were ever taken of the autopsy, and that brings into question the fact of why it took over 30 years for these doctors to come forward with this information. I think for sure he totally fucked this corpse. Like, come on. He did not just take it home to fucking dress it up.
Well, they were married, so...
Yeah, apparently. So Tanzler moved to Pasco County, Florida, which was close to Zephyr Hills, which is where his family was living. He did this in 1944 and wrote an autobiography, which was featured in Fantastic Adventures in 1947. He reconnected with his wife, Doris, and his house was very close. Yep, and his house was very close to hers. They didn't reconcile entirely, but she did help him in his later years of life. And he received U.S. citizenship in 1950. He had a death mask of Alina made, like I said that originally. He kept his obsession at bay by creating an effigy, so like another doll with this death mask in his final years. He eventually died July 3rd, 1952 at the age of 75. It took 3 weeks to discover that he had died in his home, and some report that he was in the arms of his effigy when he died. Others report that he was cowered behind his organ because he was an avid organ player.
Oh.
So, some also claim that he had the bodies switched and that the effigy was the real Alina, but that's not backed up by anything.
That sounds like people just trying to embellish the story.
Yeah, it sounds like conspiracy theory crap.
Yeah, so that's Carl Tanzler. He ended up dead, and he was a free man. He got to do
it just sounds like a very sad man who got really, really messed up.
Yeah.
The thing is, as you read about his life originally, he did seem to be like a adventurous, wandering kind of guy. And then he returned to Germany after spending time in that internment camp. And then got married, had kids, and then moved to Florida. And then just abandoned everything and started working at the hospital. Like,
maybe he knew where she would be.
Yeah.
Also, adventuring types tend to be, dissociative from really, really close relationships. So, I mean, it at least fits a basic pattern, although...
So, I'm going to show Wes the pictures here. And so, these will be posted on Instagram.
Of what exactly are you going to
well, this is Carl Tanzler himself.
Oh. Really?
Yeah. And then this is Alina before and that's her after.
Ooh.
Oh God, there's a picture of the after?
Yeah, and there's actually a picture of her autopsy as well.
Oh.
That seems indecent.
Yeah.
Tanker, what did you do?
So she was considered a beauty in the area, and even though she was still married, I think that why she refuted a lot of lovers was because it was reported that she didn't really have anybody in her life, but she was also only 22, and then she died of tuberculosis. But he was in his 50s when he met her, so...
Yeah, honestly, he kind of looks like the dude from the Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, it's weird, eh?
Because he looks like every stereotypical old man with a monocle and a beard from, like, the
anything.
Maybe the 1800s almost.
But it's such a strange case, and actually, I originally was going to do the Pascalita mannequin, because that's a story about a father who lost his daughter, and then he owned a bridal shop, and he lost his daughter the day before she was supposed to get married to a spider bite that got infected and killed her organs.
She was going to get married to a spider bite?
No, she got married. She was going to get married, and she got bit by a spider.
And then became Spider-Woman.
Yes. No. She died, and then this weird mannequin showed up in her shop, like in his bridal shop, and...
Most definitely her.
Well, it has these really weird hands.
Hands?
Yeah, the hands are so lifelike, and the face is so lifelike, so that's the daughter. Like, look at those hands. Like, look at how realistic that hand is. Oh, shit. But that's the daughter before, and then that's the mannequin that was built. And people claim that when they touch the mannequin, they feel this, like, it almost feels like leather. And even though it looks like it's made of plastic. And apparently the doll moves on its own. They have to change it, and apparently when they change the clothes on it, it has varicose veins underneath. So...
Oh, no.
Yeah, so people believe that it's actually the corpse, but he died, and they still kept the mannequin. It's still on display in the bridal shop that's now owned by a different company, but they still change it over every day. But look at that hand.
They've never tested it?
No. That's a person's fucking hand. Like...
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to do with that one, but there wasn't enough information on it. There was a bunch of ghost stories, but nothing... concrete.
I kind of want to hear ghost stories. We should talk about ghost stories.
At some point, I should put together a whole ghost story episode. But
ghost story, cool episode. Ghost stories.
But yeah,
White people.
Mike Spike.
But yeah, so that's Carl Tanzler and his fucked up obsession with Alina Hoyos. So,
and his invention of Twizzlers.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out and hearing that story. This is probably a short one.
44 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is a short one, unfortunately. But we'll, I don't know, maybe we'll make it up in the overflow. Maybe we'll just move on, and you guys will get an overflow on the next time when we got AT Token here and he's not dying.
Wouldn't be the first time.
What was the bit I said with him at the beginning? Oh, he's in another country. Maybe he'll be back in the country
I'm in the
again.
Amazon rainforest.
Well, we had to put him in. We had to put
get my revenge on white people.
But we had to put you all the way out there because your cage wasn't self-isolated enough.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna make a Dave Chappelle joke.
Oh man,
he didn't. He started feeling really bad about the jokes he was making. He had to go find himself, only to go back home in one of the southern states and realize that he regretted everything he just did.
Whatever.
Fuck you, Wes. Fuck you.
Well. All right, guys, that's it.
All right. rate, review, subscribe, notify, bell. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BA Chaos Jar.
And we have a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, we got the YouTube channel now.
So excited.
So anyway, we'll move on. I forget what the YouTube channel is called right now.
Chaos Jar.
Did you get it?
Chaos
Okay,
Jar
yeah.
Podcast.
So our
It shouldn't be that complicated.
our YouTube channel is a Chaos Jar Podcast, and you can see all our stuff recorded and listen to it. You know, tell people about it. Maybe they don't know how to podcast, so that you can send them to YouTube to podcast. You know, that's a thing. You can also follow me on Twitter at I'm glad you asked _. And if you want to become a patron and give us money, go to patreon.com/chaosjar.
You turned into John Mulaney there for a second.
Shut up! Oh my god, that actually was pretty close.
Right?
I was not expecting that. But yes, if you at a certain tier, we'll give you you'll get early access to some of our bonus episodes, but eventually they will come out. And I could say that's all, but I almost forgot about the Facebook thing in the early parts. So you can find us on Facebook at Pandora's Jar Podcast, which we're still working on changing. It's going to take like a year or some shit, but don't worry, folks, it will be changed. And all of that shit's going to be in the show notes. So join us, see that stuff, and have a good night.